Okay, so you want to tell me that you are a Palantir investor and you don't know what the ontology is? Oh, come on. Ontology, that's the most important part for every Palantir investor. It's what makes Palantir, in a sense, unique and also to some extent hard to replicate, right? That's that moat. How wide it is, that's obviously a question. But last year, I wrote an article about ontology, kind of trying to, compile different sources from the Palantir itself, from some of the books, to try to explain ontology in maybe at least a little bit slightly simpler terms. So let's dive into it and let me know if this was helpful. So let's dive in. So data ontology is a branch of knowledge representation that deals with the organization of data and information. It aims to provide a common standardized vocabulary and a conceptual framework for describing and sharing data across different domains and applications. As a result, when properly applied, it can provide a powerful decision-making framework and empower organization and, more importantly, individuals in the organization to better understand the outcomes of their decision. It allows people to understand why certain decisions are made, who made them, and what were datasets used to make those decisions. It's not omniscience, but at minimum clairvoyance, right? So obviously, the bigger enterprise you have, the more complex all of the decision making, all of the processes. Like basically, every company is that culmination of those, years that is been in the making, all of those small processes, sub processes. So, let's say if we take, some clear example as a Tesla, right? Only their automotive part, at the beginning you have the raw materials, at the end you have the fully functioning car, right? That's the process. But in order to get from raw materials to a car, wow, like just imagine the level of complexity there is, right? So there are all of these like a small micro decision that can obviously make the company operate more efficiently, which obviously means, higher margins and everything, and also simply making sure that everything's working, right? So of course, there are some failures along the way and we want to avoid all of those, right? So for every company, it's crucial how we work with information and make these processes as simple as possible, right? And Palantir helps you to understand everything. So if you are a Palantir shareholder, you probably heard the term ontology many times. And the word ontology comes from the branch of philosophy known as metaphysics, which deals with nature of existence and reality. In philosophy, ontology is the study of nature of being, becoming, existence, or reality, as well as the categories, properties, and the relationship of those entities. So what does that mean with the relation to the data? So at its core, data ontology is concerned with the meaning and interpretation of data, as well as the relationship between different data entities. It allows for formalization and representation of complex data concepts and their relationship, enabling shared understanding and interpretation of the data by different stakeholders. Answering questions about data can be a challenge, and there are many questions worth knowing answer to, such as where does this come from, where does it go, who submitted it, who accessed it, who can override it, who can share it, and most importantly, what does it mean? So again, tying to the previous points, like so many decisions, like every employee in every organization, there are so many decisions that we need to make over the course of our regular working days, right? And obviously, the higher we are in the organization, the more important decisions there are to be made, right? So, again, tying into the example of Tesla, let's say, super important point, location of the next gigafactory, right? There are so many countries where the next factory can be located, and we have to, take into the understanding the, kind of like the geography, the overall globe, the logistics, the local government, if you have some kind of an incentive, local workforce, quality of the local workforce, some kind of obviously, all of the legal treatments between the US and that particular country. So obviously that's a very high level decision, right? And that's the decision on this level. But then there are smaller and smaller decisions across the whole organization, right? And the better we can make our decisions, the better the outcome. Simple as that. So in order to answer a specific question, all data within the systems, including raw data, processed, operational, and outputs from computation model, everything's relevant. And it's essential to understand the data does not inherently have meaning. Rather, it is given meaning by the users of the data ecosystem. While this may seem like a philosophical concept, it's actually a crucial factor in any effective data system, right? So basically on this, GIF, you can see how the data is flowing, kind of the decision-making process through a different, really means, right? And ontology is a way of organizing the world into categories. In Foundry, ontology is a digital version of our organization, rich semantic layer that sits on top of the digital assets, datasets, and models integrated into Foundry. The Foundry ontology creates a complete picture of an organization's work by connecting datasets and models to object type, properties, link types, action types. And ontology is a system for mapping data to semantic concepts, right? So it's basically our understanding of the world, right? So, for us, obviously, humans are mostly working through the language communication, either, by speaking or written communication. Both, obviously now you are listening to a video, maybe you are watching, maybe you're just listening, you get some emails, you're getting notification, text messages, right? So that's a lot how we perceive the world, right? Through all of these means. And that's also why the large language models, LLMs, are so important for, plenty of basically the AI companies, and also super important for Palantir that they were able to layer AIP on top of the Foundry, right? To make the operation with the Foundry environment itself and with the ontology easier and more accessible for the end user. So effectively, ontology recognizes the data as neutral and does not have inherent meaning. While data may inform how the ontology is structured, the ontology itself should function independently of the data in the ecosystem. To better understand the role of the ontology, it's helpful to consider what ontology does. An ontology provides a map that connects a meaning, by definition, what is meaningful, right? So it's, in essence, it's us humans who are, putting priorities in order, right? So of course the computer AI can help us to understand, but it's us who are basically telling it, hey, maybe this should be the final outcome, right? So we are basically asking the AI question and provide them the kind of like the simplest or most efficient path towards it, right? We are basically defining the outcome, how we want the world to look, like it's our decision that we want to, maybe build a Tesla, build a car, make it, this and this fast, make it for, so and so many people. Would it make sense to make it bigger? Would it make sense to make it smaller? These are preferences of the customers, and we have to make that final decision. But the AI can help us how to get there. And another important point is the data governance, right? So data ontology is important tool for data management, as it helps us to improve quality, interoperability, and accessibility of data. It allows for the standardization of data definition and schemas, enabling different data sources to be integrated and shared more easily. This is particularly important in today's increasingly interconnected world and data-driven world, where organizations rely on efficient exchange and analysis of large amounts of data to make informed decisions. And also what kind of decision is available to whom, right? So obviously across different levels of organization, certain types of decision information is accessible to people either on the same level, then obviously should it be available to people on this level or to this department? Is it a department specific information? Is it information that's basically available for everyone? Who can change that piece of information, right? Is it that specific department? Is it everyone? Is it, kind of like the automated data framework? And that means that ontology plays a crucial role in the data governance, as it provides a common framework for defining and enforcing data policies and standards. This helps to ensure the data is properly managed, protected, and used in a responsible and ethical manner. In summary, it provides a common vocabulary and conceptual framework describing and sharing data, helping to improve the quality and usefulness of the data, and enabling organizations to make informed decisions. So a simple ontology with 5 objects, Palantir has been in the aviation industry for a long time, both in terms of the skywise, how the airlines are operating, also helping Airbus with all of the, basically the construction of the actual aircraft. So great example of really, super complex system where, lots of the airplanes, the flights are basically scheduled, super tightly, flying back and forth between different destinations. Everything needs to be on board, the luggage, the passengers, the crew. So super complex system, right? And that's exactly type of environment where Palantir really thrives, right? To helping basically organize these this complex system. And that means that the ontology is basically the shared source of truth that helps people make and record decisions in large organizations. So you want to have, for example, with the airlines, you want to have it all in one framework, right? You don't want to, maybe have one system for like the flight itself and a different system for managing like the crew and if they are available, if they, don't have the vacation or if they are rested well enough, right? So, if this is both two separate systems, then there needs to be some framework how to exchange the information between these two systems. Which of course, these are just the two systems as an example, right? And then you can layer different system for luggage, different system for maybe the communication with the airports. And then it creates this mess where, all of these communication is basically needs to be exchanged many times over between these different systems, right? Whereas obviously, if you put it all together in the Foundry, use ontology, then basically you have all of this data in one shared framework, which makes it super easy, right? So, basically everyone can request different pieces of data and can choose who can see it with all of these different means. And that basically means that using standard data lakes can lead to a lot of complexity as the number of data sets, dashboard, and application grow. So that's just what I just explained in that little bit simpler example. And over time, it just becomes harder to understand what data is available. New projects often end up reinventing the wheel instead of actually using or building on existing data. And in contrast, ontology provides a well-defined system for organizing data in a way that makes sense for the organization. With an ontology, organization can make the most of their data as it grows and makes it easier to manage. This helps to make digital transformation at scale while controlling the complexity. And the ontology makes it easier and more efficient to build an operational platform by focusing on a single reusable data set and application development. So instead of needing a separate data integration and data layer for each new project or use case, application and use cases can be built on the existing ontology, right? So then if you need to like a kind of like a new system or maybe there is additional layer of complexity added, then you just expand the ontology, right? It's just one of the parts of the overall system. It's not a new system that needs to be connected to the existing system, but it's the part of the existing framework. And that means that the ontology basically acts as an organization's digital twin. It helps to capture decision being made and improve decision-making process over time, right? So also, since all of these systems are interconnected and we are running through the same scenarios over and over and over, right? So let's say with scheduling the flights, over time, as you get more data into the system, it can improve on itself, right? So basically make it much more efficient and hopefully, over time, make it much more useful, hopefully not as many delays, these kind of topics. And that means that capturing decision in ontology helps organizations learn from and improve their decision making. It also allows the value of the data to grow over time, as insight from each one user can strengthen the organization and help others make a better decisions. And ontology makes it easier for data science and AI and machine learning teams to work with business and operational teams on a shared platform. Models can be connected directly to the business processes and drive the organizations. And as decisions are made and decisions and actions are taken, operational and process data is written back into the ontology, creating a feedback loop. So why does ontology matter in the end? Organizations are always complex, and some complexity is necessary and useful, while other complexity is not. The key is to know the difference between these two types of complexity. Optimum complexity is the right amount of complexity for your organization. It is what you need to achieve your goals, no more, no less. Unnecessary complexity is any complexity that goes beyond what you need. Is the extra complexity that doesn't help you reach goals and just makes, could be additional bureaucracy in most cases, right? And simply, maybe you might have worked in some of the big organizations, right? And in most of the big organizations, when you are actually in the office and need to do your job, you actually realize that there is a big portion of your day just spent with emails going back and forth, getting some permissions to do this, to do that. So that's kind of that unnecessary complexity, right? Which basically prohibits you from doing actual work that produces actual value. And many technology solutions try to make things too simple or even ignore complexity altogether. And that is also unwise because organization needs software that helps them to stay at the right level of complexity. And as a result, point solution create a jigsaw architecture that makes it hard for organizations to understand and manage the right level of complexity. This makes it hard for them to move toward or maintain it. To operate at the right level of complexity, organization need ontology in order to achieve a common system and use their resources more efficiently, use the system to drive business outcomes, improve over time by writing back information into the common system so that it and the actions it supports can develop and improve, and lay a strong but flexible foundation that allows for stability and flexibility at the same time. And through dimension properties, ontology is able to transform any enterprise. Of course, that's a hard endeavor, right? And not every organization is ready for that, for such a radical transformation, which kind of move out to the second, challenge for Palantir, which is mostly the marketing, the sales, how to really deploy the software in an efficient manner and make it as easy for the companies to, embrace it. So Palantir definitely can help. That being said, plenty of people are resistant to that change, but that's a different topic, right? But this was basically the summary of the ontology. What does it mean? And why it's important, right? Why it can change the companies. So if you are invested in Palantir, I hope this helped. And that's all for me today. Love you guys. Thanks and take care.